everyone, welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we're going to draw a cat. Now, it's going to be split into three separate videos, where one I draw the cat. So I teach martial arts, specifically HEMA, or Historical European Martial Arts, and one of the guys in the group I'm in asked me to draw a German Landsknecht cat, and the German Landsknechts were, mercenaries that operated from like the late 1400s to the early 1600s, and they dominated battlefields. Primarily, they used pikes and Zweihanders. So the first video, I'm going to talk about just the cat itself. Now it's already drawn, but the video is going to be so long. Second video, I'm going to talk about drawing the clothes, and the third video, I'm going to talk about drawing the sword. So this one is drawing the cat, which it has a lot of clothes on, so the next video will be a lot longer, but in this one's just the cat. So, as always, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet. I'm drawing straight into Photoshop. Let's get arting. All right, so here is the German Landsknecht cat. Now we have his fur, which I've opted to go for kind of a brown tabby. Orange tabby, brown tabby-ish. The distinctive, they have that M-shaped blackness on their heads, and I'm not going to draw on the black because on a tabby, shouldn't have to, but just like always, we build up the fur and we aim for the corners of the eyes as we're coming up. Now his head's turned at just a little bit of an angle, so keep that in mind as we're sketching him. His body's also twisted at just a little bit of an angle. It's not much, but I did that to add a little bit of movement. If you have it too far forward, it starts to look rigid. You don't want that to happen, so you can add movement by changing how a figure is standing. It's not looking straight at you. It's, turned to the side, and you can kind of see that, right? His pants come up this way. His chest is coming over here. It's not straight down. His head's cocked just that little bit and turned, adds motion to it. It's not much, doesn't have to be much for it to work. Just needs to be enough. And then looping the fur down as it comes over. Coming straight off the nose, but it changes colors here, so keeping that in mind. Right, have that coming down. One line in between the other, especially with fur. And it's not a long-haired cat. And then up over the eyes, you're going to have kind of a swoop. Around the eyes, need to be careful because that's what our eyes are first drawn to. Our eyes. That's what we'll look at typically first. So then you have kind of that M shape coming up. So we're going to leave some gapping where you have the black coming through. And then up the nose, this goes straight up. Just did some gapping, and then I run two into it. Same thing on this side with the other one. Leaving some gaps. Eye's important, so making sure that's a nice big loop around the eye. Bringing that over. We'll see how this looks when I'm done, or if I should have sketched out a bit of the M on the forehead. And that'll come down a bit and still bring that over as the fur changes direction. And pushing that up towards the ear. And then just bringing it straight out. And then here, still being mindful of the fact that it's got some black here as well. And the same thing on this side with the cheek, right? Pushing it straight from the nose all the way to the edge of the face. Once again, follow the eye. Same thing basically on this side that we did to the other. Leaving that M, not the M, I'm sorry. Under here it's the, like a swoosh by the eyes. Tabbies all kind of have it, that little shape. And then bringing it straight to the edge. Even though he's covered a bit by feathers. And some of this would definitely be in shadow because you have the hat. And then of course the color change with the white on his chin and a little bit of his cheeks. Okay. Get his ear real fast. We'll be able to see some of that. Now at this point the ear would be in front of the hat, but not bringing this all the way up because we wouldn't be able to see all the way. Just that sort of side section of his ear. And then his paws. We're just going to do that in the direction that his paws are going. It's okay to not follow the edge because it's furry, so furry things would very rarely be perfectly aligned. But allowing that direction to swoop down as it comes down, even if it comes off a little bit. Now I do have, there will be some white under here. Right, bringing that down. Probably some brown still here, but we'll do some over here as well. That probably has, as it goes in, but some white underneath. Did draw his another paw over here, so we'll just quickly do that in. That's not too big, it's just sort of barely along the side. And then his tail and feet, leaving black spots again and some white underneath, because the tabbies typically have stripes on their legs and tails, so it's straightforward to sketch. And then, you know, when you're doing this, you just stop the lines and it'll create that sense. Don't push it through like I just did. Stop the lines. It's okay if it's not straight though, right? It's fur, so inevitably, just like with an edge, fur is rarely perfect in how it's lined up. It doesn't just lay nicely. Alright, so we have the little paws. And I'll have the white kicking out. Same thing here, bringing it straight out. Looks like I didn't finish drawing that, but that's fine. A little bit of white, and then just bringing this down. Now I have white going under his tail. Not all cats do that. My tabby had a lot of black in him, so like his tail tip was black and his feet were black, and he only had like a little spot of white on his chest and a little on his chin, and otherwise he was brown and black all the way through. Okay. All right, I'll add the white. Same thing as we were doing with the brown, right? Just sort of building that up. That's how we get his face. Want to make sure he has a nice distinctive smile here, so we'll make sure that I work on that a bit. And then I'm going to use like a slightly lighter brown, but okay. Here. Get him some white. Various places. Okay, so before I get rid of the white, I am going to go ahead and add some white fluff in his ear. Now, I'm going to come in here with this lighter, oh, that's a pink. That's what I meant, lighter brown. And get under his eyes. Of course, that's a layer I turned off. That's okay, I should be able to do it. Because it's just this. Get like a little square under Tabby's eyes that are a slightly different color. Again, being careful. Now, I'm going to do the pink of the nose. Now when you're drawing kind of on this scale, right, I never change my brush size. So when we get to shadows and highlights, it's going to build up a lot quicker. Okay, the nose, and then I guess I'll use the brown I used to finish out his ear instead of pink. I was going to do it in pink, but I'm going to do it in this color instead. We'll just have it coming down. And then we'll get the feathers, and then the sketch will be done. And it'll just be a matter of drawing it in, adding the highlights and shadows. I'm just going to take the green. I'm not going to do the eyes, but I'm going to add just a little bit of, well, probably just go ahead and do a little bit of it. No, let's just get in this edge. Because that will definitely have to be drawn in, so. And that'll help get the eye set up. That's that, okay. I'm probably going to need that because that's my colors. Okay, so he's all sketched out. Now it's a matter of adding the highlights and shadows. I'm going to have the light source coming from above and to the left. Right over here. Let me change my color real fast. We'll do the yellow clothing first. Right, light source coming from above and to the left. Always, as always, that means it's above and in front of, not behind or next to. And the reason I'm doing the left instead of the right, like I usually do, is he's turned just that little bit towards the left. So I want the best possible opportunity to really brighten up my subject, and that's going to give it the best opportunity because he's just that little bit turned. I'm going to save it and jump right in. Alright, I've decided to get the fur on the cat done first. I think that might help, especially because he doesn't look like he's having a good time right now, and I want to see if I can bring his little smirk back out. Okay, So with the light source coming from above and to the left, that means all of this is full pin pressure. And we're going to follow the lines we've already drawn. All edges are in shadow, right? So even once you get over here, right, all of this is in shadow. And that's just lighter pin pressure. So backing that off, it's a little harder to get some of those details with a smaller figure like this. Partly because I don't change my brush size, which I've mentioned before, so in this particular case I'm using the same size brush but with less wiggle room. So all of this, but it's not going to be as deep as the shadow that'll be over here, right? So a little bit under the nostril too, right? You're going to have some of that in shadow under the nose. And then somewhere along here, I think it's, yeah, right here, we have the edge of his face. Okay, so now this is going to be full pin pressure through here. But tapering it off as we get to spots where we've added shadow. So we want that to blend in. And still following those lines. Once we add the white, that should actually potentially really help. Right, so then we have that strip of black here. I'm blending this in. And here. See, I back off my pin pressure and then sort of taper it in to make it look more natural. You gain a lot of ground pretty quickly when you're using full pin pressure, and especially if you're like me and you're not changing your brush size. You're going to gain a lot of ground here. Alright, so up in here. And we can change the size of that stripe on his face. Just trying to highlight that there's a smirk there. The white will help too. But adding in just a little bit of highlight against the shadow right under here will make it look like a ledge, which will help make it look like he's smirking. Same thing here, there is some black by the eye, so we won't be filling that all the way in. And that full pin pressure. So again, being careful by the eye. Now under the eye would be in shadow, so right, the eye's rounding down, so there's going to be some shadowing there. Just like there is against the eye itself. And then going into highlight over here. Now, over here, same thing. I'm just checking the edge so I can do this. Right shadow against the face, rounding up, and then shadow underneath. And we'll make this, I can get rid of this, a little bit of a deeper shadow over here, as it would be turning away. His head's, it would be rounding away from the light source, which is on the opposite side. So it's always a deeper shadow on that back side. So I'll pull this up and build it up just a little bit more. And then we can have some space to get the highlight in there, because there will be some want it hitting his cheek a bit. Usually what I do, maybe I should, is I get this whole side in shadow and then work out the highlight. That might be, whoop, huh. Don't get overzealous like me. I just blasted through some, what should have been black. I guess, yeah, I did there, okay. I did here and here, so I need to come in and remove it. Come in and remove it. And then under the hat, let me get this whole, some of this is going to be highlight, but I do find it easier to do shadow and then build highlight out, and the cheek will pick up highlight because it's pushing forward, so this wouldn't be in shadow, but it'll just be easier to do this. Especially with his body so turned towards the light, there's going to be more of his face in highlight than usually when we do an animal portrait, potentially. It's not so turned, but if we fill this in just a little bit more, it'll give me a little bit more freedom. It's easier to add highlights than it is to take highlights away. So of all the scenarios, this is the easiest one to kind of make happen, is filling this in over here. And then the back side of the eye as well. I guess that can come down. And then the hat's going to be casting a shadow too. Just like the other side, right underneath the eye here, there's going to be some shadowing where that eyelid is rounding down into the eye before it picks up highlight. And then pulling this all the way over. Right, and so then you have the hat, so this would be shadow. Especially with the feathers coming down. I'm gonna give myself some room. And then it'll build in a little like runway for me to have some maneuverability. Okay. When we add in the highlights. Now, have some shadowing there. I probably would have some shadowing here. Probably just a little bit here, although there's some black there, so. And then you still have the hat, so some would be under here. And here on the back side of this ear, which is away from the light source. Alright, so aside from the ear, the rest of this should be highlight. So we're going to move this over. I'm going to back off a little bit to blend it in. Right along here, but I'll probably be pushing that up, but I'm going to blend it first, and then as I see fit, I can change that. Some of what backing off your pen pressure does too is it narrows your brush, so that helps it blend a little easier. Okay, and then into the full pen pressure here. And I'm going to fill in the rest of his face, and I will be right back. We're going to add some highlight over here, right? This is his cheek here. So we're going to, and I don't have to add more pen pressure to one of the reasons I'll do this, is I just have to add more lines, and adding in more lines will brighten this up pretty quickly. As you can see, it's instantaneously brighter. And then I'm going to add some down in here. Brighten up. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do. Brighten up just a little bit. So bring this over. And do a little bit over here too. And get a little bit more up in here. Foreheads typically are going to have the brightest runway, but with so much casting a shadow, that changes it a bit. With that basically wearing a hat, it's going to change how much his face is doing that. Now I'm going to get the ear, so inside the ear, especially because, right, the ears are curved just a little bit, it's going to be on shadow, and it's going inside, right? We're going to have the fluffy hair coming out, certainly, but with it sort of going inside and deeper into the ear, won't be a whole lot of room for this section to have highlight. And then we have this side of the ear, which would a bit, you would have, right, all edges are in shadow, but along the middle, you're going to have the middle towards the left, have a little bit of a highlight coming in on that ear. I'm going to give a little bit of a burst, just a little bit, nothing much. Now he looks he looks kind of weird with his little white mustache. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of his fur. So hand, backside, fur here would be shadow. Potentially some highlight creeping in, so I'm going to do that. Same over here. Backside shadow, but potentially some highlight that would be creeping over. And then up here, same thing, right? We have that, the back side, his hand sort of, paw, I guess, hand, whatever, is rounding away. So all of that would be in shadow, but as it comes forward, it would be catching the light. So give it a nice big shadow, and then we'll fix it. And then shadow on the front of his little paws. And then some highlight. Blending it in. Once again. All the way up. Highlights and shadows will help give us the little paws. Push this down so that blends in. There we go. Yeah, that makes his paw show up nicely. And then his fingertips here, paw tips. Just that little bit. Nothing big. If I'm adding some hair coming off, adding it in a certain direction. Okay, now his feet. Same idea, right? You have shadow, and then underneath you have that back side. Would certainly be shadow. And then over here, shadow. And then a bigger shadow. Making sure it cuts off in the same spot that the other one does. And then underneath on all of them. Oh, all of them. Underneath on all the little toes that I just delineated. Before we go into that full pin pressure, but this a little bit over here too. And then full pin pressure, full pin pressure, fading it. Letting that in. Same thing over here. Looks a little weird with the white not fully built in yet. There's one foot. And then second foot. Same thing, allow that to fade out. And then up here, same thing. It's got individual toes. And then his tail. And I feel like I need to brighten up right under here a little bit more. And then we'll dip the white. His tail, the most part, I think is going to be, well, there's a little bit of highlighting that'll be here. Because his tail's jutting out, it'll catch the light, but it will still have a lot of shadow. I'm going to do the whole thing in shadow, being careful by the sword, and then sort out the highlight from there. Won't be much, and this won't, take too terribly long. Just some quick stripes of blending. See, this would definitely be shadow. This is shadow. Okay, so if it was going to have any highlight, have it probably a little bit through here. Maybe just a little bit here too. Also remembering that the white is part of the tail too. Okay. So. Gonna brighten this up just a bit. And have it dipping down after that. Yeah, that should really give his eye some pop, which will be good. Yeah, helps define his face a bit. And then blending it in a little bit better. For the white, and I come under here and, low pin pressure as we bring this around. Same thing with this side. This is what should make his mouth pop if I do it right. Should give him his smirk back. And then, yeah, maybe you can push the white a little bit. And then being careful to blend it in blend it into the shadows. That is, it's not as important to get it quite right against right. You can have like a color change happening. See how easy that is. I can just put white over there and you get a nice color change. Same thing for here. Just blending it in. Making it bright where it can be. And then onto that full pin pressure. Makes him kind of look like he has a mustache. But we are going to add a white chin, so that's going to change it a little bit. So the chin I'm going to do in full shadow. I usually do for chins. There's not a lot of room with chins. And the highlights tend to come kind of in the middle, so usually do them in shadow and then build up that highlight. And it's nice and white, so that should really draw attention once it's done. And then of course he's got the white fluff underneath. Okay, and then adding in that highlight. Again, don't have to put a lot of pin pressure here because I already have the lines in place. Tapering that off as we bring it over, making sure over here it's nice and bright and that it's faded off underneath. There we go. Huh, that gives him a more muted look. I could probably get rid of that deeper line. Okay. Let's give him some white shadow into highlight. And then down here, for the most part, is just shadow. A little bit of light maybe at the top, but see, if you push this in, you can blend the colors together a little bit by intermixing the white. Same thing down here. Okay. And then the tail. Oops. Okay. And mixing the two colors together. And a little bit of a burst where I can see. Right, you don't want a color change to happen in a highlight or shadow, so if I have a highlight going all the way up to a color change, I'm probably going to add the highlight in the color change before it fully tapers off. Okay. Now, I'm going to get the fluff in his ears. Just light pin pressure, and then we'll build it up. Tips will be in highlight because it's going into the ear. So the back side, it's dipping down, will be in shadow. Right, and you don't, for the hair in the ears on a lot of animals, it's a little messier, so it can just sort of be this ring, wild hair kind of going in a lot of different directions. Okay. And then putting a little bit more pin pressure, and it doesn't matter if my strokes stay straight. You can see I'm changing them up. That's okay, because it would. And hair like this, I have that effect where it's kind of going all over the place. Now the last thing to do of the cat's fur is this kind of cream color under the eyes. And that's just full pin pressure. It's not quite a white, it's just like a creamy, there's often like a little bit of an extra brown a lighter brown with tabbies when they have, you know, under their eyes. Okay. And then if we want to blend it, it's usually a pretty harsh transition, but I'll blend it a little bit. Have some of this pushing out and up. Help make it look a little bit more blended. Okay. So we'll do the nose, and then just debating on if I should do the whiskers yet. Probably not, because the whiskers going to go over some things, but we'll get the nose done. That'll, you know, be super quick. And then other than the whiskers and the eyes, his face will be done. Right, so under the nostril, some shadowing. Down under here, some shadowing. Shadowing down the middle of the nose. Shadowing on the back side. And down by the nostril. And then, well, full pin pressure-ish. Small space. This is super small space. Leaving some black around the nose. That's common in tabbies. And then tapering off that pin pressure as we bring it over. Okay. Yeah, the only thing I'm going to do real fast is taper off this just a little bit. Not much. Just a little bit. Yeah. It's not a blatant smirk. Yeah. It's a good start. I'm going to mess up the edges of this tabby just a little bit, because they're usually not quite so clean. It's just kind of a messy, like, fur pattern. Yeah, it makes it look a little bit more fur-like. I'm going to do the same down in here. Push the fur into some of the black territory. Okay. Yeah, so let's do the, kind of get the whiskers real fast, since everything is now covered. So as we do whiskers, draw from the shoulder, start right through here, and just make nice, long, light, quick, oh, not like that, quick strokes. As you come up, round up, not through the nose. Surprisingly, whiskers don't go through the nose. You want them kind of bunched up, and then they'll come down, drawing from the shoulder. Whatever you do on one side, you'll need to do on the other. So I have some coming down on one side, so they need to come down on this side, and then coming over just as far and just as up. And hopefully not making any weird shapes like that twice. Yeah. Maybe a little brighter. Oh, not that bright. So this isn't full pin pressure, it's just want to make sure it's showing up and looks equally bright on both sides. Yeah. Okay, so now I'll get his eyebrows, which are white. And that's just, you know, some quick lines. What can I do too? Those weren't bad, but a little bit more extravagant for such an extravagant kitty. Same spot over here. Yeah. Okay. Now his eyes, which we have in that green. Oh, there's so many layers. Okay. So, I'm drawing the pupil first on both sides. And then just do kind of a semicircle. So as I bring this down, I'm following the edge of the eye, right? This angle, because I don't want it, it's casting a shadow, so this is the edge it's following. Same thing over here, right? We're following that edge as we bring it down, even though I have that edge coming up. It's fine. Same thing. We bring that down. And on the other side. Again, even though that comes up, that's fine. And then we'll do a full sort of full semicircle. Do a semicircle around the eye. Not a lot of space to work with, as I mentioned before, because I keep my brush size the same, even though I'm dealing with a much smaller space, which means the brush gets bigger a lot quicker to cover more ground a lot quicker, but that means it can also fill in the gaps too quickly, do too much too fast. Okay, so now I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool, come in here, and erase to make it a clean edge. Select inverse, take the brush tool and make sure it's filled in all the way. Select inverse, drag this over, do the same thing on the other side. Select inverse. It's okay that I'm changing directions. It's the easiest way to make sure there's no gaps. And then deselect. He's looking at us, and now we need to add the highlights and shadows. And get rid of that stray, but for now. So we'll have a burst of light on the opposite side of the light source, just like we did with the clothes, right? Coming out of a recess. So you have a burst of light on the pupil on the opposite side of the light source. And then you would fill it in on the side of the light source, but as it gets to this edge, this would be in shadow, where it dips into the pupil. This would be highlight all the way under the eye. Once you get to the edge of the eye, it would taper off into shadow. Some nice bright highlight. Fading this off up here. Just sort of fading it in. Same thing on this side. Fading that out as we come over, but trying to match it to how much I did on the other one, which is brighter than I usually would have done. That's fine. Might add some yellow to his eyes. That could be interesting. Well, in green and yellow, it's a good combination, and it's easy to do. It adds more of that muscle. Not that we need to with this cat, but okay. Yeah. Now, I mentioned adding some yellow. So if we come down here, select a brighter yellow. See if we can do this without it being too much. I'm going to have it hit just on the opposite side of the light source, right? So we're going to have that little spot catching some light. And then I'm going to do these lines. It's just kind of squiggles up and down. They go all the way to the edge, but you taper it off in the shadow, right? So up and down, up and down, up and down. So what it's doing, I have to erase that one anyway, is this, but with very light pin pressure. And that'll give kind of the effect of the muscles in her eyes. The way that this is drawn already kind of has that effect, but you want to do it more in a highlight than in a shadow, because that's where the light would be picking it up. That's why you also choose a lighter color, but don't push it into the pupil. Sometimes I do that. Get a little overzealous with my squiggles. Right, when you pull back, you know, you can't really fully see it, but it is there. It'll add just that little bit of extra texture. And as we bring it over, you can have a little bit indicating it's there, because you do want that to still be there, just not as predominant as it is when it's over here. And you want to push it all the way to the pupil and all the way to the edge, or almost all the way to the edge. You don't want to push it too much into the shadow. And then the final thing for the eyes is the light flare. I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool again. We're going to change this yellow to white. Use the elliptical marquee tool to, on the side of the light source, create a little highlight. Make sure it's in the light of the eye, and then just fill foreground color, move it over, do the same, roughly in the same distance from the bottom of the pupil. Foreground color. So that gives his eyes some noticeable and you can readjust as needed. Yeah. I'm going to do one other quick thing for his face, mostly because I don't like how his ear looks like it's a separate entity from his body. I want to bring it down under the eyelid. Yeah, the eyelid under the whatever it's called. All right. Eyebrows. I'm just going to push this up. Doesn't take much. Just enough that it's not like a separate, like the ear's some detached thing. So that shouldn't be how it looks at all. There we go. Now that runs together much better. Alright, so that's the first part of drawing a German Landsknecht cat, drawing the actual cat itself. I hope that's helpful. In the floating nether next to me I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.